Hello, YouTubers. I wanted to share a neat little ditty that I used with Docker to run X applications in a Docker, but natively on my desktop. And kind of the concept is much like you would just run, say you launch Genome Terminal, it's going to open and show up on your desktop, right? And the goal is, in my case, I wanted to upload some Google Music, and that requires running the Google Music binary to do bulk uploads. You can't bulk upload music to the web interface. So that's a precompiled binary, and running shit like that on your machine, you typically want to not give it lots of access. And believe me, I've learned the hard way. So I thought this was really neat, and I wish I could remember who the hell figured this out, because it makes perfect sense now. But here we have Chromium, Firefox ESR. We're installing sudo, and we're basically going to create a user within Docker that is the same user ID as me, the user that is on the actual host machine. And then we're setting up this developer. We're just going to call him developer. And this is just the manual steps for adding the password in the group file. And then we're adding them to sudoers. And then these are some helper scripts, because in order to run Chrome, yes, we'll have access to the desktop, but we're not going to have access to dbus, for instance, and we're not going to have access to the video card. So I have two helper scripts. The Firefox one's probably totally wrong, but the Chrome one enables software decoding and software GL shit instead of expecting hardware acceleration. And then there was one other, you have to run it in a sandbox too, because that's like an option for Google Chrome that you shouldn't use normally, but it's already running in a container, and it's just a throwaway Chrome anyway. So we enable that. And then here we're actually getting a fresh music manager and installing that, and then firing it up as the developer. By default, the entry point just runs Chrome. So to build this is my typical build flag. So I'm in the Docker directory, and I have a local copy of the Debian also. And say you need to run a really old version of some OS, and like a really good example is, say you have some old Java shit that IPMI comes to mind, and you need to run old Java and old shit, but you don't want to install an entire OS or virtual machine or whatever. This could be applicable for that too. But so anyway, the Docker components are there. The other side is the run component, which is going to use your local display variable and throw it in as an environment. We're going to give it enough shared memory that Chromium can actually survive. And then here we're mounting the X11 socket. And so that will give the X app access to the X desktop in our local environment. This is an override because I just want to run bin bash and launch Chrome internally. Never run this for a Docker typically. This will enable full network access to everything natively, and if you had a VPN or anything else, it'll have access to that. and your actual MAC addresses and things like that. Google Music needs this, however. So this option is here to be thrown up here and uncommented in the event that you actually want to run Google Music. And that's just because they do additional security checks. Well, I'm using security in quotes. They're actually verifying that they know who the fuck you are, even though you authenticate. They basically, it won't run if they don't see the real MAC of your machine, because they've already snooped the shit out of your machine. Period. So they know. So anyway, that's kind of fucked up. I don't want to have to do that. I don't know the workaround for this. It delves a little deeper than I was willing to go. So you build just name, and then you give it a tag. We'll call it Google Music. You can call it whatever you want. And then you run it using the run script. And now we're in there. And if you tried to launch Chrome, or Chromium, excuse me, it's actually going to bail. And there's a couple different reasons that it's bailing. It doesn't seem like a good bail, but one of them is that it's doing some C group stuff anyway, I believe. You know, it's containerizing things internally, and it can't really do that from within the Docker. It just can't. And so that is some shit. And then OpenGL, getting access to your hardware to render things and stuff like that. So again, a little deep for me, but the workarounds that I found is if you enable this sandbox mode and then you tell it just to use software GL, then you can actually run Chrome. So there you go. So this is a brand new Chrome, and it's running on my local desktop. So I have all my normal, keyboard control bullshit. And you can go to YouTube and watch your YouTubes, and they'll just software render. Now we're not gonna have sound here. We're gonna have commercials. You can install AdBlock. AdBlock Plus, whatever, somewhere. Extension. Here we go. Blink. Yeah. Just add it. Sure. And you go to the YouTubes. Sure. Now we don't have access to music. There's a number of ways, or audio. You could get around that by using Pulse Audio and its network ability. There's a couple different ways you can get around that. I'm gonna leave that up for somebody else to do. I didn't need it, but I just wanted to show this because if I didn't already say it, I've seen a lot of people run Xorg and then run VNC and then VNC into their Docker, and then you have a bunch of layers. And I just prefer this because, we're not running anything. It's more like just running Chrome or whatever locally. So less overhead. At least that was the thought behind it. As for the Google Music stuff, yes, this Docker installs that. It will not work. You would log in and it would successfully log in, but then Google will say it can't verify you. And the answer for that is to, again, like I said, run this incredibly scary net equals host, and at that point you're I'm not even gonna do it, but I did do it to upload music, but it just means that your actual network will be viewable here, and instead of this private network address and, and the natting and all that stuff, you'll see all of your actual real interfaces, including your Docker interface and everything else. So you're getting full access, native access, and but running Google Music is one of the reasons you could do that. But the goals for me, like I said, was like if I want to run Xterm in a thingy, like we can install Xterm, and then again, we still don't have a bunch of shit in here, but we can run Xterm, and that is being ported through the local sockets. You don't need to do any further allowance, and we're not running a ton of overhead in the Docker. So that is the basic concept, and I want to thank whoever came up with that. It makes perfect sense now that I've done it, but I figured I'd share it in case other people had a use case that they wanted this type of situation for. And for me, mostly the situations because I don't want to destroy my machine. I constantly destroy it anyway, especially because I fool with a bunch of NVIDIA shit and the object classification shit, and I'm trying to be more responsible and do all my playthings in Docker, but unfortunately X is one of those things that is a little bit harder to do in a Docker, and can end up being pretty heavy, which doesn't really matter. It's still better than making a mess of your machine, but I just thought this is a little bit more of an elegant solution that covered a lot of use cases. And of course, this could be built upon, and if you need sound, you could figure that out. And yeah, so I just thought I'd share it, try to get some of those concepts out there, and see if it was helpful for anyone. So I guess, if you hate computers and you hate Linux and you hate the internet, like, comment. Let me let me know, let me know what you thought of this little ditty, because I thought it was pretty cool. It's weird. It's weird, right? I think it's weird.